Hey everyone, Mr. DVB here, and in today's video I'm going to be talking about my most anticipated games releasing in 2026. This year is absolutely stacked with some massive titles releasing, ranging from long-awaited sequels to completely new IPs, and there's honestly way more than 10 games that I'm excited for. So before I get into my main list, I do want to quickly go over a few honorable mentions for some games that I'm still really interested in, but they just didn't quite crack my top 10. First up is going to be Pragmata, the mysterious new sci-fi game from Capcom that's been in and out of showcases for the last few years. For me personally, what really makes this one stand out so far is its combat system. Instead of just aiming and shooting like a traditional third-person shooter, you actually have to use your AI companion to hack enemies in real time and expose weak points before you can deal full damage, which I think is a really neat concept. I feel like it's going to create this really unique hybrid of puzzle solving and combat that feels quite different from a lot of other shooters that we have on the market right now. The setting of the game, it's got this like futuristic abandoned city on the moon, which looks incredible visually. Capcom's RE engine has produced some of the best looking games in the industry lately. And so yeah, really looking forward to this one. It's one of those games that could either be really special or something that doesn't quite come together, which is why it's sitting in the honorable mentions for now. Next up is going to be Star Wars Galactic Racer, which is a game that I have been asking for years. I have wanted a new pod racing game for so long. I feel like we haven't had one since like Star Wars Episode 1 Racer back in '99. And from what we've seen, the sense of speed looks fantastic in this. They've added modern racing mechanics like online multiplayer, customizable pods, track hazards that dynamically change during races. My main concern though is the longevity. Racing games can live or die based on post-launch support, and if this launches without a strong progression system or meaningful updates, it might lose its player base pretty quickly. Still, as someone who loves the idea of pod racing in a modern engine, I'm really hoping that this one delivers. And finally, we have Saros, which is Housemarque's follow-up to Returnal, a PlayStation game from a few years back that I had a lot of fun with. Saros keeps that roguelike loop of dying and restarting runs, but it introduces a more permanent progression system, so you don't lose everything when you die. That alone might make it, more accessible than Returnal, which was incredible, but also a very punishing game. Housemarque said they're also evolving their bullet hell combat and focusing even more on atmosphere and storytelling, which is something that I feel like a lot of players wanted more of in Returnal, especially myself included. So looking forward to seeing how this one turns out. Alright, now heading into my actual top 10 list, kicking off number 10, we have Tomb Raider Legacy of Atlantis, which is a full remake of the original Tomb Raider game. This one's being built with modern traversal, updated combat, completely overhauled physics and everything. Original Tomb Raider was very influential, but it's obviously quite dated by today's standards, so getting to revisit that game with modern design is something that really appeals to me because I've never played the original title. I've only played the 2013 game and bits and pieces of the sequels to that. So Crystal Dynamics, they've said that they're expanding some of the levels and environmental storytelling, so I think that'll be really cool just to get that full experience of this game. Moving into 9th place for me is going to be the Duskbloods, which is the newest game from From Software. Interestingly, it's a PvPvE multiplayer-focused game launching exclusively on the Switch 2, which is a little bit of a concern for me. Not the fact that it's on Switch 2, but that it is, a multiplayer experience. I was hoping for another story-based game from them, but it could still surprise us. It's going to be blending gothic horror aesthetics with some more advanced technology, giving it a really cool like gas lamp fantasy style, which I like a lot. Instead of traditional Soul-style exploration, players will be entering shared environments where they'll fight monsters while also competing against other players for objectives and resources. The shift towards multiplayer is definitely the main reason it's not higher on my list, but I'm still really interested to see how they're gonna, design a full multiplayer experience while keeping their signature difficulty and atmosphere intact. At number 8, I have 007 First Light, which is going to be a new James Bond game, which is going to be telling a origin story for him as a younger character. It's being made by IO Interactive, who obviously did the Hitman games, which were known for their stealth-style missions. And it seems like, they're going to be transitioning into a much more action, cinematic, heavy set pieces, very similar to the Uncharted games. It seems like it's definitely taking some inspiration there. And it'll be really cool just to, approach missions in multiple ways, like with stealth, gadgets, or just going in full guns blazing. That freedom of approach is what definitely made the Hitman games so enjoyable, so if they can successfully translate that into a Bond game with some strong storytelling in varied locations, this could easily end up being one of the best spy games out there. My concerns right now are mostly technical. Some of the early footage looked a little bit rough from a performance standpoint on consoles, And I have a feeling that this could be a game that launches in a pretty rough state. But conceptually, very interesting. Like I said, taking a lot of inspiration from Uncharted, which is my favorite franchise, so looking forward to this one. Moving into 7th place for me is going to be Halloween the Game. So this is another new asymmetrical horror game from the team behind the Friday the 13th title, which was a game I was a massive fan of. I put hundreds of hours into that title. It definitely had its issues, but it's probably one of my favorite games of all time, to be honest. I had so much fun with that, and I'm a big Michael Myers fan, a big Halloween fan, so getting, that game kind of reskinned with Halloween style, I feel like is going to be a lot of fun. The core loop is going to be revolving around survivors working together to escape Michael Myers while he stalks them using stealth and environmental kills. Developers said they're focusing on AI civilians and map-wide objectives this time, which means it should feel more dynamic and less predictable than Friday the 13th, which could definitely add to some longevity. There was actually some new gameplay shown today, a bit of a gameplay deep dive, which kind of went into Michael's different abilities and what the players are trying to do. Looks really cool. You can even spawn in as Dr. Loomis or a police chief once you've died, very similar to how you could play as Tommy Jarvis. So really looking forward to this one. My concern, again, is going to be longevity here. The Friday the 13th game, unfortunately, kind of came to an end because of legal issues where they weren't able to really make new content for the game. Texas Chainsaw Massacre just sort of lost its player base, and Predator Hunting Grounds just genuinely was a terrible game. So we'll see how Halloween turns out. If I'm able to at least get a good year or two into this with friends, then I'll be happy, but I am hoping that there's more content and things here to give the game those extra strong legs. Moving into 6th place for me is going to be Phantom Blade Zero, a game that's going to be blending Souls-like structure with very fast, stylish martial arts combat, which looks like a ton of fun. Unlike traditional Souls games that emphasize slower, methodical combat, Phantom Blade seems like it's going to be built a lot more around speed, animation cancels, and chaining together large combos. Weapons have their own skill trees. Enemies are designed to force you to constantly stay on the offensive rather than just, turtling behind a shield. And that faster pace could definitely make it feel like something between Sekiro and Devil May Cry, which is a really interesting direction for the genre. So really looking forward to this one. Everything we've seen from it so far, gameplay-wise, at different showcases, has looked excellent. So really excited to get my hands on this one. Moving into 5th place for me is going to be Crimson Desert, and yes, this game is already out, and I have been playing it for the last week. I contemplated not including it on the list, but I was looking at, all the games coming out this year, and I really wanted to talk about this one still, and kind of give you guys what my list would have been at the start of the year, had I actually gotten it out on time, so I decided to keep it. So I'll try to do my best to talk about this game without, referencing how I actually feel about it playing it. But definitely, just the hype leading up to this game was pretty huge. It's been in development for years. We've been seeing footage of it for years, and it looked like it was going to be one of the most ambitious open world games of all time, to be honest. It seems like it was really just going to be packing in a smorgasbord of content, things from all different kinds of genres, just a really seamless open world, large-scale battles involving hundreds of NPCs, destructible environments, physics-driven combat system where you can grapple enemies, use environmental objects as weapons, chain together attacks in real time. Just, looks like an awesome game. It also includes life sim mechanics like fishing, crafting, territory control. So it's trying to, blend in RPG elements with sandbox and cinematic storytelling all into one experience. So when the game releases, we'll see if it lives up to the hype. So far, I will say I've actually been having a blast with the game. I think it's a ton of fun. Really good title, so maybe I'll do another video in the future talking about the game a bit more. But it was definitely a game that I was very excited for heading into this year. In 4th place for me is going to be Marvel's Wolverine, which is the newest game coming out from Insomniac, the developer behind the Spider-Man games, which have obviously been some really fun titles. I have adored those games, and I'm really excited to see them tackle a new Marvel character, in this case Wolverine. I feel like, going into that full M rating is going to really allow them to dive into Wolverine's brutality. There's going to be dismemberment, tons of blood, probably a much darker story, which I think will be great. And it's going to be, a more linear globe-trotting structure rather than that single open-world city that we've had with Spider-Man, which I think will keep the pacing tighter and sort of avoid a little bit of the fatigue that I've felt with the Spider-Man games personally. As much as I enjoy those titles, you can only swing around New York so many times before it gets a little bit repetitive. So I think, just getting that big variety in locations, going from Japan to Alaska, I believe, to literally British Columbia, where I live, which is awesome to see. So I think that's going to be really cool just to see Canada represented in a big AAA game like this. But yeah, really looking forward to this one, and just to see Insomniac introduce the X-Men into games. I think that'll be awesome. Can't wait for this one to come out. Moving into third place for me is going to be Lego Batman Legacy of the Dark Knight. I know it might seem a little goofy to have this so high on the list. It's probably my most nostalgic pick on here, but I can't wait for this. It is telling Batman's full story from his origin all the way through, you know, his most iconic villains, combining storytelling from all of the different movies that have come out so far into like one continuous narrative, even including like parts from the Arkham games, which I think is great. It feels like it's going to be just a really huge experience for Batman fans, which I love. The open world looks fantastic. Gotham City is massive in this game. It's even larger than it was in Batman Arkham City. So there's going to be all kinds of crimes, collectibles, and side missions to do, all kinds of, you know, iconic landmarks to enter and explore, which is going to be great. You can even fully customize your Batcave. So it definitely feels like, you know, they're putting a ton of work into this, and it's definitely like one of their most evolved games yet, I would say. They're introducing a revamped combat system, which is going to be mixing stealth takedowns from like the Arkham games with gadgets and combo-based fighting, which is definitely a big evolution from older Lego games, which were just essentially button mashers. I also think it's going to be awesome to finally have a difficulty setting in a Lego game. That's never been a thing before. I've always thought it should have been something that they could have implemented. So I'm definitely going to be playing it on one of the higher difficulties where, you know, when you lose a certain amount of lives, you have to redo the level. I think that's great. It's going to add some extra difficulty for older players like myself who are still clinging on to these Lego titles after like 20 years. Moving into second place for me is going to be Resident Evil 9. Yes, this game is also already out. It's been out for like a month now. I've already played it. I did a walkthrough on my channel. Again, I wanted to just give you guys my initial list as it would have been at the start of the year. But I was so excited for this game. Resident Evil has easily become one of my favorite game franchises over the last 10 years. I first started the franchise with Resident Evil 7. Since then, I've played all of the remakes they've done, so 2, 3, and 4. I've played Resident Evil 8. I've played 8 and 4 in VR, which were awesome experiences. So just love this series, and I was so excited for 9 ahead of its release. You know, just mixing together two very different storylines. You have you know, Leon, who is going to be, you know, or who is much more of like a third-person, action-oriented character where you're just mowing down hordes of enemies, very similar to Resident Evil 4, with Grace's style, who is, you know, much more first-person, survival horror-focused. Just that blend, I think, was a really great concept, and spoiler alert, it turned out great in the game. I think that mix was fantastic. The location of the hospital in the game is probably one of my favorite locations in the series. That care center was so fun, very creepy game, looks incredible. I mean, like I said, the RE engine is phenomenal, what they're able to accomplish with their games. Gorgeous looking game. And you know, just that nostalgia factor of getting to revisit locations from Resident Evil 2 is something that I really loved. So great game, I will say that, having played it, and it was easily one of my most anticipated games heading into the year. But finally, though, number one for me is going to be Grand Theft Auto 6. This is the first game for Rockstar since Red Dead Redemption 2, which was released back in 2018, and it's their first GTA game since GTA 5, which was well over a decade ago. Came out back in 2013, so there's been a long wait for this one, and I can't wait just to see, you know, what they're going to do with this title, how they're going to push the open world simulation further than ever before. It has that modern Vice City setting, dual protagonist story where you're playing as Jason and Lucia. Lucia is my girlfriend's name, so that's kind of funny as well. You know, I feel like there's gonna be kind of like a Bonnie and Clyde element to the story, which will be really cool. But can't wait for the story. Massive, you know, NPC density, dynamic weather systems. You know, it's going to be so built because these developers, you know, Rockstar puts in so much work into their games. You know, just such highly detailed titles, and I can't wait to see all the things they're going to be in this. There's rumors about like causing car accidents will lead to construction crews coming in and like fixing streets and things like that in real time. If that's true, that's crazy. I'm hoping you can enter, you know, more buildings than you could in GTA 5. I think this will really just be a big step up for the franchise. Can't wait to see that. I mean, they have obviously an incredible track record. They are one of the most well-respected developers out there. So can't wait to see what's going to happen. Stakes with them are very high for this game. I think they know that. I think they're looking to really deliver for the fans of the franchise, and it'll probably be the biggest game of all time at launch. So really excited for that one. So yeah, those are my most anticipated games releasing this year. Let me know what your most anticipated games are down below. Guarantee there's a few big titles I didn't mention here. And if you enjoyed the video, make sure to like and subscribe for more gaming content, movie content, all that stuff. Thanks for watching. I'll see you guys in the next one.